We learned a lot of things yesterday. We learned that Kyle Schwarber will in fact remain a member of the Philadelphia Phillies, and we learned that the Castellini family remains this franchise's biggest stumbling block. We're going to break it down on today's Locked On Reds.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Reds podcast. My name is Jeff, his name is Steve, and we are lifelong suffering Cincinnati Reds fans, just like you. And we're so glad that you're alongside us here today. We've been podcasting about this team for a combined 14 seasons, and Locked On Reds is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team, your Cincinnati Reds, every single day, and we want to thank you for helping make Locked On the #1 sports podcast network in the country. On today's show, a little bit later on, we're going to dissect how the Reds can repair the damage that they did on Tuesday. In a few minutes, we will look at why Plan B looks a lot like 2025, copy-paste. But we will begin with our overall thoughts and the fact that this just feels like a huge gut punch of a day to be a Cincinnati Reds fan. That is all coming up on today's episode that is brought to you by FanDuel. Live bet all of your favorite NFL games with FanDuel. There's no better way to enjoy a game. Download FanDuel today. Steve, when it comes to Tuesday, the news, the headline, the move of Kyle Schwarber going back to Philadelphia was not a stunner, was not a shocker. That was what everybody thought was going to happen. What happened after that, the explanation of how deep the Reds were, the reporting of how close their offer was, or lack thereof, and the ensuing reports of Nick Krall saying what's going to happen now have absolutely flattened me to a point that I am just, quite frankly, there's too much of my personality that is wrapped up in this team, and I freely admit that. But, man, I feel depressed.
I think deflated is a better word because I feel like I've had all of the air just sucked out of the sails. You know, we've been talking a lot about Kyle Schwarber and the fact that the Reds handled this differently than they've handled anything else in a long time gave us a glimmer of hope and allowed us to lean into it and believe. Now, they made an offer, and I don't have the numbers in front of me of the offers, but I think ultimately they came in second in the offers. Third. Who was ahead of them?
So the Phillies and the Orioles offered the same.
That's right.
The same thing, 5 years, $150 million, and the Reds came in at 5 years, $125 million.
Which for this franchise would have been a record, would have been the biggest contract that they ever handed out, and gave you just the hope for just a second that maybe the Castellinis were figuring it out, that maybe they realized where their errors have been, that they were going to do something different. And we learned that that's not true. And we're going to get into that in the second segment. But I think right now here at the beginning, Jeff, it's just really disheartening, I think, for this entire fan base when a player of this caliber, you had an opportunity to get them that were more than willing to entertain your offer, were more than willing to come to a ballpark that they were going to do amazing things in. And the Reds still just couldn't quite manage to get it done while crying poor. And it boggles my mind that they continue to operate this franchise this way.
I saw multiple reports. It wasn't just speculation from Joe Schmo on X or some guy on TikTok. There were multiple reports from national guys and from local guys that were like, it's probably going to take about $30 million a year. And the Reds heard that and they said, cool, we'll offer 25. And I have two thoughts on this right away, because I know that there are plenty of people that are just like, well, that seems like a respectable offer. That's good that the Reds got to that point. And I'm not going to argue with you with that, but I will say this. That comes up to $25 million less total, i.e., that's like a whole year for free compared to the other offers that he received. So he was still being asked to take a discount. Now, there were reported that there were incentives, and that number could have went up. but it's all moot at this point. But I say that to say this: he's getting guaranteed $25 million more than what the Reds offered. We said that if the Reds offer was competitive, that he would pick that over the other teams. But as Jeff Passan very plainly lined it out in his article about the signing, the Reds were unwilling or unable to meet the financial demands to sign Kyle Schwarber. And that was always our biggest question. I mean, they even had reports where they had Kyle Schwarber and his wife down to Great American Ballpark at the end of November to talk to them about what's going to happen. They were having them in person. This was real. The interest was real. I see a lot of people saying, well, their offer doesn't make me think that they were interested. They were. It's just they're interested on their terms, which is what always falls back on this team. As much as we love Ellie De La Cruz and as much as we love Hunter Green, as much as we love Andrew Abbott and all of the guys on this roster and Terry Francona and everybody else, it is run by an organization that wants to win on its own terms, and those terms are not the same as the Dodgers, Mets, and Cubs and Yankees and those teams.
Let's emphasize a few of the things that we did learn based on all of this reporting, both from a national and a beat writer level. We learned that this franchise is in fact capable of offering a 5-year contract.
Yep.
We learned that this franchise is in fact capable of offering a contract at more than $20 million a year per.
Yep.
We learned that they can do that. We learned that they understand that that's the modern economics of baseball. We've wondered at times that maybe Bob just didn't know.
Right.
Bob's an older guy. Maybe he just didn't know what's going on in the economics of baseball.
He's still celebrating Pete Rose being the first $100,000 player.
Right. Turns out Bob knows. Turns out this franchise knows. And turns out they are capable of responding in a semi-appropriate manner when an opportunity presents itself. Keep all that in mind when we get into segment 2, folks, because I have a lot of things to say about how Castellini's running this team that may get me in trouble. Maybe not. We'll see. But I am just so disheartened at not only looking at the rearview mirror now and how they've handled the last several off seasons, knowing what we know now, which is they can make a modern competitive baseball offer. It wasn't as competitive as it needed to be, but it was a competitive baseball offer. It's better than any of us when old Gordo floated this question at the All-Star game. It's better than any of us thought the Cincinnati Reds would put together for an offer.
Well, and you know what's intriguing is that, speaking of Gordo, Gordon actually had the number correct on his article that he was talking about. And he said it, he tried to frame it like it was tongue in cheek, but at the end of his article, he put down, he's like, and Schwarber might even be willing to accept $125 million. That's exactly what he got from the Cincinnati Reds. And so that intrigues me to no end that he put that out there, but he put it kind of tongue in cheekly. Like, I will admit it makes me kind of trust him a little bit more as a reporter, but at the same time, I'm just like, golly, that is what we were talking about, because there were reports that I think the Pirates offered 4 years, 120. So that would mean that the Pirates offered him $30 million a year, but they just offered him 1 year less. Mm-hmm. So technically, yes, less than the Reds, but that means that the Reds offer and the Pirates offer were basically on the same level. And if that is where you want to be, that is what has me so concerned about this, because we've talked a little bit about the Pirates and the Reds looking like Spider-Man memes, and they continue to not try to prove that wrong.
They do. And can I just say also that I have absolutely no ill will or animosity at all towards Kyle Schwarber. He absolutely had to take the better deal. You know, this whole,
I saw people asking if we should boo him, and I'm like, absolutely not.
Absolutely not. No. This hometown discount nonsense is ridiculous. Just because he happened to be born in Middletown, you want him to make a financial decision that's not in the best interest of his family? Would you do that because you were born next to a Ford dealer? Would you pay extra for a car? You know, would you ask? It makes no sense to me. So no, there is nothing wrong with how Kyle Schwarber handled this. He did what was best for him and his family. And I appreciate the fact that he came down to Great American Ballpark and sat down with the Castellinis and Terry Francona and Nick Krall and talked this out a little bit and gave them every opportunity. In fact, sounds to me like gave them extra opportunities to get this thing right, and they still couldn't get it right. Yeah. And guess what, Jeff? We learned in the aftermath of the Kyle Schwarber signing how the Cincinnati Reds are going to approach the offseason the rest of the way. Charlie Goldsmith had some interesting information that he shared yesterday on social media and on his various writing sites, and we're going to dig through that coming up next.
I love Game Time. I use Game Time all the time, whether I'm going to a game tonight or I'm going to a game 6 months from now. Game Time has you covered because they've got great last-minute deals, and they show you the all-in pricing up front before you ever add the ticket to your cart. Or if you're tracking an event like, say, opening day, then you can set price alerts for it, and they will alert you whenever prices drop so that you can take advantage of the best available prices. Plus, if you're going somewhere you've never been, they show you your view from your seat. Steve and I use this app all the time, especially during baseball season, but football season as well. I use it to go to Cyclones games during hockey season. Game Time is awesome. You've got to download Game Time today. Create an account and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB to save $20 off your first purchase. Again, that's Game Time and the promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today.
Thank you for making Locked On Reds your first listen of the day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcasting network out there. Thank you for all you've done to help make that happen. You already live your team every single day. Now take it up a level and go ad-free. Join the Everydayer Club today and get Locked On Reds with no interruptions, ad-free on the audio channel, members only Discord access, and much more, all for just $5 a month or $50 a year. Go to lockedonreds.supercast.com or check the link in the show notes to learn more. All right, Jeff, speaking of learning more, we learned a lot more after this news broke. Charlie Goldsmith came out with an article, and I love Charlie's reporting because he will tell you exactly what it is that he found out. He will not filter it through a rose-colored lens. He will just give it to you straight. And what he gave to us straight was the fact that the Cincinnati Reds are going right back to how they were operating before. They went right back to being out of touch. They went right back to being not willing to do the things they need to do to move this franchise in the right direction. They went right back to saying, we're going to develop. We're not going to go sign any free agents of note. We're not going to spend any big money. That money we were talking about spending, pretend you didn't even see it. Look over here. I got $1 because we're not spending that money.
Yeah, he straightforwardly said, Charlie Goldsmith said, the Reds were in Kyle Schwarber derby because of where he's from. They would have made an exception for him, but now they're rolling with the $5 to $10 million of payroll flexibility for the rest of the winter. Steve, they based their idea on investing a number that they felt uncomfortable with because the man is from around here.
It gets worse. It gets worse. It gets so much worse. There's a continuation of that. There's a continuation of this information. And it's the part that tells me that the Castellini ownership group is completely out of touch with all of baseball and is completely out of touch with this Cincinnati Reds fan base. They have no clue who it is, the people that they are serving with this team, because they went on to say, we were willing to go out of our zone. We were willing to spend this money. We were willing to go after Kyle Schwarber because we thought it would sell tickets, because we thought it would put people in the stands. Do you know what else will put people in the stands, Jeff? Do you know what else will sell tickets? Do you know what else will put money in the Castellini's pockets? It's putting a damn winner on the field. It's putting a team on the field that can compete for a division championship, that can compete to win a postseason series and not get their clocks cleaned the first time they sneak on in. It's putting a team on the field that can bring home a World Series trophy. Castellini can't get that done. He needs to sell the team. He needs to be gone. They are clueless about what it is this city wants. This city will bend over backwards to support a winner. This city will fill that stinking ballpark up every single night if you put a 95-game winning team on the field. That's how you sell tickets, Bob. It's not because Kyle Schwarber's from Middletown. It's because he can hit 56 home runs behind Ellie De La Cruz in a lineup. Come on.
Yeah, it's about making the team better. And the fact that they were willing to spend $25 million on Kyle Schwarber, and now they're like, nah, we're good. We only got $5 or $10 million to spend on anyone else not from Middletown. That's why I joked on Twitter. I'm just like, quick, somebody go to Pete Alonso's Wikipedia page and say that he's from Middletown. Something like that. Like, I find this just so insulting as a Reds fan of how they are treating this, where it's like, nope, you're right. Because then in that same article, Charlie had the quote that we all hate, but I'm going to say it anyway because it falls in line. Quote from Nick Krall: "We have made the decision to be a draft and develop team because we have to be that team. We have to continue to have a strong farm system to grow players to the big leagues. We are a small market. We want to be good in this market. This is the best way for us to do it."
Cool. How many power hitters are coming through the system right now? Who's the
Pete
next
Alonso
power
would
hitter?
sell tickets.
Pete Alonso would sell. Anybody
Bellinger would
that
sell
could give
tickets.
anybody that could give Ellie De La Cruz protection in the lineup would sell tickets, because that means this team would win more games. And the more games this team wins, the more people will be down at the banks. It's simple.
Take Kyle Schwarber's name out of this. We were talking about and we were loving a legitimate move, the possibility for the Reds to make a legitimate move. There are legitimate moves that remain that can be made and that $25 million could really help you make. But if you're going to hamstring yourself and go back to the idea of, well, the one and only guy that ever existed that we would give this money to doesn't want us to give him this money, we now will not offer it to anyone else. That is a horrible way to want to run a franchise, because Kyle Schwarber was not the beginning of a build. He kind of felt like the cherry on top. He kind of felt like the final piece to the puzzle. And now they are looking at that final piece and they are saying, no, we will see if the pieces that we currently have can fill in this remaining space and see if they can all expand and grow, because that's exactly what they're going to tell us for the next 3 months is that, well, so-and-so really is going to bounce back, or so-and-so is really going to break out, or so-and-so was hurt last year and they won't be next year. And that's as good as getting a Kyle Schwarber. And we've heard that all of our lives. And I'm tired of hearing that. It's just absolutely nauseating at this point.
I think it's also really disheartening that the Castellini ownership group thinks that it was more about the Middletown factor than it was about
they clearly
these factors. It was about, how about 187 home runs in the last 4 years? How about 434 RBIs in the last 4 years? How about 11.1 wins above replacement in the last 4 years, Jeff? And just one more for funsies. How about an OPS plus of 134 in the last 4 years? Right. That's what it was about. It was never about Middletown. It was about finally seeing a player that the Reds could get their foot in the door with, that addressed the needs this team has had for years. 4 years we've been begging for a power hitting outfielder. For years we have been begging for somebody in this lineup that can put a bunch of runs on the board with one swing. We've been begging for it. And finally along came a guy that could at least get in the room. And they thought it was because he was from Middletown why everybody was so excited. No, it's because finally, for once, the Reds were being considered a legitimate Major League Baseball franchise that might go out and address their needs.
Yeah.
Turns out that's not the case in the Castellini office.
I low-key wonder if, like, whenever Gordon Whitmire talked to Kyle Schwarber at the All-Star game, he said, well, you're from around here. Have you considered becoming a Cincinnati Red when you become a free agent this offseason? I low-key wonder if, like, that was the moment when Bob perked up and was just like, maybe we should go for him because he's from Middletown. He's local. That's just it's horrible. And look, we're not just being overly negative about this. Ken Rosenthal reported that the Reds will not be in on any of the other top free agents in the market because they considered Kyle Schwarber special because of the fact that he grew up so close to the ballpark. And the fact that you look at, like, there are reports that the Mets are only willing to offer 3 years to Pete Alonso. Hello, McFly, Nick Krall, go give him that same contract that you just offered to Kyle Schwarber and got spurned. Maybe he picks that, and maybe you get yourself a legitimate slugger in the middle of this lineup who's younger than Kyle Schwarber and actually had more WAR over the last couple of years. So, like, ultimately, there are options out there, and the Reds presented themselves as a team that were willing to spend X amount of dollars, and then for 2 seconds said, wait a minute, what are we doing? And said, oh, no, JK, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. Forget about it.
Just for funsies, Jeff, Pete Alonso over the last 7 years as a member of the New York Mets, just for funsies, 264 home runs, 712 RBIs, WAR 23.3, OPS plus 135 over his career. Yeah, go offer that same offer today. Go offer it. Go do it.
He's the guy. He's the guy that they can go get to fix the damage that they made today. But it really sounds like that's not where they're looking. So how else can they go about that? We'll discuss that next. There's no better way to enjoy a football game than to bet it live with FanDuel. And all you have to do is check out all the different lines that they have, because as the game goes along, point spreads change, totals change, money lines change, even player prop bets change. And FanDuel is all over it. If you want to get in live on the action in every single football game for the rest of the season and even in the playoffs too, FanDuel has you covered. Like right now, the line for the Bengals, they're 2.5-point home dogs to the Ravens this Sunday. I don't know about that one, because it kind of feels like the Ravens are frauds. But the question will be, are the Bengals still in this? I think Joe Burrow will still keep them in this, but 2.5-point dogs is interesting at home. The live lines are going to be crazy. Got to check it all out over on FanDuel. Download that FanDuel app today and get in on all of the live betting fun. We encourage you to keep the conversation going with us after the show is over. You can follow me at Jeff Carr with 3 Fs on X, and you can follow Steve on X at S. Offenbaker with 2 Fs, and you can follow the show at Locked On Reds. There's no Fs in that. All right, Steve. Yeah, Pete Alonso would clearly do that. I'd buy a Pete Alonso jersey. I would have bought a Kyle Schwarber jersey. I'd buy a Pete Alonso jersey. I feel like there's a lot of folks that if the Reds made a move to sign Pete Alonso, again, under the guise of a legitimate move, people would be excited again, because people were excited about the Reds acting like a legitimate organization that wants to win legitimate games. But they have now taken that off the table again, so that we just hope to be surprised by them doing something. And maybe that's their goal. Maybe they are really trying to completely surprise us for Christmas. They don't want us guessing what's under the tree. But I am so to the point that I'm thinking, like, they're telling us they're going to go sign Austin Hayes back, and they're going to go bring Brent Suter back, and they're going to go bring Scott Barlow back, and they're going to say, hey, look at this. Boom. There you go. There's your offseason. And we're going to be like, we had those guys last year.
Right. Barlow, I think, is a real possibility. Suter, I think, is a real possibility. I would not be shocked at all to see that happen. I don't think they're bringing Austin Hayes back, but I also don't know that they'll go out and talk to an O'Hearn or another one of those guys that would make any sense either. So, maybe I'd be okay if they sign Andujar and you know what? That's a lie. I'm not okay. They totally took the wind out of my sails yesterday, Jeff. I don't know. I don't know where they go from here, because Nick Krall wasted 0 time. 30 seconds it took for him to just be like, no. We're draft and development. Draft and development, guys. Point to me the power hitter they're developing. Where is he? Where is that guy? Somebody asked Nick Krall that question. Hey, Reds Fest is coming up. I'm going to shout it at him. Where is that guy? Where did you draft and develop us a power hitter? Where is he? Are you hiding him in Goodyear? Is he out in Daytona and we just don't know it? Like, where is he?
Well, Steve, CES, he's going to figure it out, and he'll be at cleanup next year. And we got Reese Hines. We might actually play him next year and figure out if he can play. it's so frustrating and insulting and nauseating, and I'm trying to think of all the words that just mean annoying, that there are 3 different things that you can do to build a major league roster. You can draft and develop, you can sign free agents, and you can make trades. And the Reds actively shun 2 of those 3. And they're like, no, we draft and develop. That's all you do? Because you're never going to get.
And they only draft pitchers and shortstops, remember. So I don't know how that's all going to work out.
Right. So, we're going to have a whole bunch of really confused outfielders for the rest of our lives, and catchers that I don't even know how they're going to figure that one out. Ellie's going to have to catch, I guess. But honestly, like, just looking at all of this, like, the way that they fix this is just make legitimate moves. That's all we're asking. That's what we asked at the beginning of all this, before we ever really thought that the Kyle Schwarber watch was actually going to produce anything. That's before we ever got excited about all of that. Just make a legitimate move to make this team better. And a legitimate move, it feels really illegitimate to just go through the entire offseason and say, well, everybody's going to get better. Because you know what we did last year? That. You know what we did the year before that? That. You know what we did the year? You get where I'm going with
that. And also, I want to tell you something else I'm upset about. That Castellini is trying to suck the fun out of me and this sport. You know what I mean? Like, I am truly just so disappointed today. And not because Schwarber chose the Phillies, but because the Reds were so fast to be like, never mind, look over here. We were just kidding. Like, I don't know how they can have a complete lack of grasp for what it is that puts people in the ballpark. It's not because the guy's from Middletown. It's because the team's winning. It's because it's exciting to watch them play. It's because you can get to see 56 home runs. It's because you get to have that energy. It's because you have the postseason opportunities. It's because you might win a championship. Those are the reasons that people come out and buy tickets and order concessions and buy jerseys and hang out at the banks and do all those things. It's not because anybody's from Middletown. And they're just so clueless. They're absolutely clueless.
I think it's interesting too, Steve, because last year they make the playoffs. And I think any normal person would say, all right, that's your opening act. What are you going to do next? And I think if you were to ask the Reds organization that, they'd be like, what? We made the playoffs. Didn't you see? Yeah, but what are you doing? Wow.
I kid you not. If it hadn't already been done, Bob Castellini would have been out in front of Great American Ballpark with a mission accomplished banner behind him. If it hadn't already been done, Bob would have done it, because that's how they view that. You are absolutely right.
Yeah. Like that was the culmination of the rebuild for them. And that is what everyone is so worried about. And that is what, like, if you are sitting there, and I probably should have said this at the top of the show, but if you're sitting there and you're just like, man, what on earth? And you're super mad at the team right now, go right on ahead. Be mad at this team, because this was a horrible day. This was a very, very bad day for the Cincinnati Reds. And I don't think they understand how bad it was, because I don't think it bothers them. I really don't. And that is probably the thing that is the most bothersome about all of this.
Agreed. Listen, Jeff, we're going to be in a better mood tomorrow.
Yes.
We're going to try to regroup and gather our thoughts.
Get back to talking baseball, right?
Ideas for the hot stove league to heat up a little bit more for us, and see if there's some players to look at. There's some rumors out of Houston that might be worth talking about. We'll get into that tomorrow, or they're at least going to be worth mentioning. We'll be back on track tomorrow. So everybody, take today, purge it out, and we'll regroup, and we'll try to be a little bit more positive the rest of the way as we bring you through this Cincinnati Reds offseason that is steaming towards 2026. And with that, Jeff, get us out of here.
Thanks so much for checking out today's Locked On Reds podcast. Make sure that you are subscribed, become an everydayer, make us your first listen every single day, and make sure you check out the Locked On Reds Everydayer Club. Go to lockedonreds.substack.com, or sorry, Substack, supercast.com.
Yeah, that's not it.
Different website, lockedonreds.supercast.com. And did we make your Spotify Wrapped? If we did, make sure that you post that on social media, tag the Locked On Podcast Network national account, and you'll get a free month on that Locked On Reds Every Day group, because you'll get free, ad-free, not free, ad-free shows, and you'll get a members-only Discord channel. So make sure you check that out today, and make sure you check out Sully. He's going to have you covered for all the views around the league. The Dodgers signed a closer to a $33 million per year deal for 3 years. Yeah, that's what the Reds are supposed to compete with. That's going to be fun. Anyway, Locked On MLB is just like Locked On Reds, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're your team every single day. But as for Steve and myself, you know that we will be Locked On Reds every single day.
Boy, you were a little discombobulated there, buddy.
I've been discombobulated all day. It's been a horrible day.